Mark Blair. We're going to go with a lighter question. Now, Mark Blair says, by the end of MythBusters, you were practically a full-on stuntman with the stuff that you did. I just got an email from MythBusters stunt coordinator and safety guy, Nick Plachey. We worked with him for the whole run of MythBusters. Was there ever anything that you refused to do if it was too frightening or maybe disgusting? Oh, right. We did the taser episode, and we spoke extensively to Nick and Angie about the safety of doing that. We talked, we did the best research we could, and the insurance company was okay letting me get tased on the show by a full-on, you fire the barbs and they go into your body and you get tased. I believe we had permission from the insurance company to do this because of my checkup and my heart condition. And I spent a whole week thinking it through and decided not to do it. I just didn't want that. I didn't want to, I was unwilling to put my body on the line in that case. Yeah. I mean, I will tell you one of the reasons why. When we were on MythBusters, we were regularly trying to quantify what dead was. And just like everything else in science, the closer you look, the blurrier things get. So you want to talk about death. What kind of death are you talking about? Respiratory death, cardiovascular death, brain death? There are all sorts of systems in your body, and they all take different amounts of time to shut down. And which ones of them are mission critical is a moving target. There are people who have had no oxygen to their brain for 20, 30 minutes, maybe even for hours, and they come out with no brain damage. And other people have like 4 minutes of oxygen deprivation, and they are debilitated for the rest of their lives. So within medical science, it is actually a difficult thing to quantify what the instant of death actually is. And we often needed this value experimentally. And that meant that we would consult with the best experts that we could and kind of cobble together an answer. And the one that I remember is within electrocution. And it turns out that the minimum amount of electricity to interrupt the rhythm of your heart beating is 7 milliamps for more than a certain number of milliseconds. Is it 7 milliseconds? And it's some tiny amount of milliamps. I can't remember the exact figure, but it definitely was under 7 milliseconds, 7/1000ths of a second. And then when we had the taser in the shop and we were looking at it in an oscilloscope, we were noticing that the pulses of the taser we were working with pulsed at less than 7 milliseconds, but just barely. And I looked at that and I thought, they're looking at the same data we did. They're trying to pulse it underneath that infarction timing to keep the heart. So look, I appreciate that the engineers of the taser were attempting to make it non-lethal. We know from all the data that the taser is by and large statistically non-lethal, but you can't call it a non-lethal weapon. This is the main reason that I did not want to get tased. But then there's also the fact that I knew how hard it was to figure out what death was. And I was looking at these guys who seemed to be, look, I'm not saying that they didn't do due diligence at all about what was a lethal or non-lethal amount of electricity. But it felt close enough to the research I had only recently done to feel like, I don't want this. So that's why I wouldn't get tased. Meanwhile, like Tori Beleche is like a tasing addict and was for a good portion of the show. He and I think it was Eric Haven would trade off with one of these tasers, and they're just and they really got addicted to that feeling. Not me, man. No more electrocution for me. The last thing that so those two things I thought were too dangerous. But the last thing is disgusting. We were doing an episode about poop hitting the fan. And in order to do poop hitting the fan, we needed an analog for poo. And we sent I right about this? Yeah, we sent Truman Hanks, Tom Hanks' son, was one of our interns for about a year. A lovely human being, still a good friend attested. And Truman's first day on MythBuster, we sent him to the roof to pick out several pounds of dog poo that we had gotten from the local doggy daycare place, because dog poo is consistency-wise the closest to your average human poo. There was so much research we had to do to figure this out. And then we used the dog poo, specifically Jamie did this formulation to make an analog that was the same amount of stickiness and softness, because we wanted to see if poop hits a fan, is it really going to spray it everywhere, and all of that. Once Jamie had a recipe for human feces, I'm so sorry for this story. Once he had a recipe for human feces, we, of course, realized we should color it a non-feces-like color. We should color it blue. And that's what we did, because for all the obvious reasons, and Jamie, once you tell him something like, yeah, we got to make it a different color than brown because people won't be able to handle that, he's all like, wait a minute. You would see it in his eyes. He'd be like, oh, I want that. You'd be like, you can't do it. He'd be like, no, I really want that. You can't make the poo brown, Jamie, because someone could turn on the TV at some random moment and you're like scraping it off your face and it clearly looks like poo, and then you eat it. And he's like, no, I want to specifically eat the brown poo on camera. And I was like, no, you cannot do that. And I'm telling you, our bosses won't let us do that. But even more interpersonally, I'm telling you, I don't want footage of you eating fake poo that looks like real poo on television. You can't do that. We went back and forth on that for hours. I won, clearly, because you haven't seen it. But yeah, the not eating poo, that definitely was too disgusting for television. Talon Varmeer says, was there ever a myth you didn't want to but did anyway? Yes, there was. Within the business of being a network, when you have multiple shows going, you look for ways to maximize the way your shows can help each other. I understand this from having worked with Discovery executives for decades. And that meant that when MythBusters was enjoying the bulk of its success, which is really from 2004 to, I think, really like 2012, that was before we started to hit the other side of our bell curve, 2011, 2012. For that whole time, Discovery would constantly ask us to do episodes that supported other shows on the franchise, which is why we did two different Deadliest Catch episodes. And one of those was really, really fun. The other felt like a little bit of a kind of a slog to get real material out of it. We did two separate episodes in Alaska to support the Gold Rush shows that were on Discovery's networks. And I mean, Alaska is one of the most beautiful places on Earth. The only two times I have been there has been in the dead of winter. I spent a whole week at 40 below. Celsius or Fahrenheit, doesn't matter. That's where those graphs actually cross. 40 below means the same thing in both scales. And some of those episodes felt a little like pulling teeth to get what you would call relevant content out of. And that's the difficult thing, right? Like, I understand it from a network executive's point of view. Let's use one of these things to help the other. You guys bust myths about a thing, bust myths about this other franchise, and then we can do a lot of cross promotion. I totally get that. But there were things that looked like there was a lot of meat on the bone that once you got there, there wasn't. I mean, and one of my favorite examples is the James Bond franchise. We did a great couple of James Bond episodes, and we thought there'd be fertile James Bond material for days. But after the second episode, we went through the entire James Bond canon, literary and filmic. And so many of the things in James Bond are so impossible that they're not even wrong. There's no there. Could you have a laser power enough to cut through steel in your watch? Not even close. Not in a million years. Not in this universe right now. But there he is, like, it's like slicing through an iron bar. And sometimes these promotional episodes were really difficult. I will tell you one thing that astounded me is we were working with a real crab trap on our Deadliest Catch episode. And we had some of the guys, some of the Deadliest Catch cast, and they're, first of all, amazing humans. I loved every single one of them we got to work with, but holy hell, are those guys the strongest mofos that I've ever met. Because Jamie and I are slinging around this cage. And I am no great shakes of physical fitness, but Jamie, you know, Jamie in his prime, is a powerful example of manhood and strength. And watching these Deadliest Catch guys pick up a crab trap and move it was like, oh wow, there's something bigger than Phil. It's an old Mel Brooks joke. Anyway, yeah, some of those cross-promotional episodes felt like a little bit like heavy lifting. And we got crap from the fans for that sometimes. Like, really, is that really a myth that you needed to test? Sure. It is the realities of commerce. And again, I don't begrudge the network doing this. I totally understand. And, you know, we fought back. We fought back on a lot of that stuff. And, you know, everything that was good about those episodes were specifically because we worked really hard to tell a genuine story and to make it based on something we were actually interested in. Sometimes that didn't always happen, despite our best efforts. Thank you guys so much for this wonderful hour and change spent answering these delightful questions. I really, yeah, like I said, the questions about MythBusters get better and better and better, no matter how long we've been from producing it. I am so grateful and so proud. And, you know, the entire group of people I got to make this show with are still among my favorite humans on the planet. Thank you so much for watching. If you'd like to support us even further, you can by becoming a tested member. Details are, of course, below, but it includes all sorts of perks, and we're building them all the time. You get advanced word and behind-the-scenes photos of some of our projects. Questions, you get to ask direct questions during my live streams, and we have some members-only videos, including the Adam real-time series of unbroken, unedited shots of me working here in the shop. They are weirdly meditative. Thank you guys so much. I'll see you on the next one.